morning, everybody. Hope you're all well. Without further ado, Woody.
Thank you.
One of the founding Pilgrim Fathers.
Yes, that's true. We won't go into those stories too much. Yeah, we did have a division, I think, a number of years ago between England and what was to become the United States. And I have a deep background here in that my great-grandfather, 8 great-grandfathers back, came from England. He had gone to college in King's College in Cambridge, and shortly after he graduated, he came with his parents to the United States in, I think, 1632. Another ancestor came about that same time, Henry Adams, and another about 100 years later came from Scotland, and that my name comes from Scotland, Zuill. So there we go. But we won't go into too much detail of that. I got a lot I want to cover, and way too much for the amount of time that I have, so let's see what we can do. Let's make sure that I can get my slide clicker working. Hey, it's actually working. Very cool. I am extremely honored to be here today. I love this conference. I came first in 2015, and I'm very pleased to be back again. I've really enjoyed being on this campus. It's beautiful. They must focus on horticulture somehow here, because their arboretum around here is full of fascinating plants and trees from all over the world. Does anybody know about that? Is anybody familiar with that? I want to learn about what they do here. I was taking a walk back from the beach party with Gerd, and we saw, he mentioned a tree, which I've looked at this morning. It's called a monkey puzzle tree. Somebody helped point that out to me. Who helped me learn that? There we go. Thank you so much. I looked it up, and I believe you're correct. It's from Chile. It's from Chile, so it's a South American tree, and that it thrives here, apparently. Okay, so let's go on. I don't think of myself as a public speaker, and to be invited to do a keynote is kind of a troubling thing to me. 20 years ago, I would have had trouble even getting in front of a group of 10 or 15 people to speak. And I've had to learn to speak in front of people and become at least comfortable enough with it to be able to do a talk like this. At times, I will get stumped on what I'm trying to say, and I won't be able to continue on. So those in the front rows will have to just come up and poke at me or nudge me, and I'll get started up again. So I apologize for that, but this is a scary thing to me. There's still plenty of seats if you want to come in. If you prefer to stand, that's all right with me. You can do that if you want, but there's still chairs throughout, particularly in the middle section there. Alrighty, so I always start with this. Those of you who were in the workshop yesterday know this is important to me. The idea is I can't tell you what to do, and I shouldn't. It would be presumptive of me to think that in any way anything I could say is going to be important to you. I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you how to do it, whether or not you should do it. But what I can do is share the things that I've done, and if that gives you hope or is useful to you, that's really wonderful to me. And that's why I'm out doing this. I take it seriously that people find mob programming, which we're going to be talking about, to be potentially useful to them. And that we originated the idea puts me in a place of responsibility to be able to share it. So I've had to become good at clearly explaining what this is about. How many of you here know what mob programming is? How many of you have done it or do it on a regular basis? You've done it, so 6 or 8 or 10 of you. Okay, that's probably not uncommon. At an Agile meetup like this, I would expect to see some people have done it. Out in the general world, very few people even know this exists. Joshua Karievsky told me to always put a cat in each one of your presentations. It connects you as a human with other humans. And so, but I like this particular picture. I got this from Montyboy, whatever that is, .net, and I think it's a good demonstration of apophenia. Does anybody here have apophenia? Everybody has apophenia, right? Do you know what it is? Okay, then we probably won't go on, but basically we will take any data and turn it into something. We will put meaning on almost anything that's not related to that data, and that's what this cat, does it actually exist? It does now in our minds. Okay, so I'm going to do a real quick introduction to mob programming. Mob programming is all the brilliant minds working together on the same thing at the same time, in the same space, and at the same computer. So to me, Agile software development came out of a space where people realized that we cannot collaborate if we're not working on the same thing. We cannot collaborate if we're not working on that same thing at the same time. And we can't collaborate if we can't communicate easily with each other, which in the early days worked best perhaps by working side by side. And I think this is a very important thing, is that if we are there to have a human conversation with somebody else in the same space, it's important to us. Well, that's what I think the Agile Manifesto kind of contains, this concept. I like the squeaky floor. Can you hear the floor squeaking as I step around? I apologize for that. I have to pace while I talk. I will try not to squeak too much. This is the thing. If we are all sitting at the same computer, it really emphasizes the idea that we're working on the same thing at the same time and in the same space. I have a 3-minute video that I often show to demonstrate this, and I think I'll show a little bit of it in a moment. But this is the basic concept. We're going to gather together all the brilliant minds at the same place, but we need to have all the skills and knowledge we need to do this work. If we have all the skills and knowledge gathered together, then we can get to this work rather directly. We can go from beginning to end without any interference. That's the idea. It depends on what work we're doing, but in software development, it's usually going to end up writing some sort of code, but there will be other things we're working as well. In this grouping, this is our early on our team at Hunter Industries, where we sort of originated this idea. This team represents all the skills needed to do this work. There's a product owner there, there's a tester or two there, there's coders there, there's a worthless entity right there, which is called the manager. But I was actually coding still with the team at that time. We basically have a group of everybody we need to do this work, but it's not 5 people watching one person program. It's 5 people working together. We have a cognitive space, a context that we're in, and we're sharing that cognitive space together. We are actually working together. It looks like this. It's called Driver Navigator. It's a model that we follow. The person at the keyboard could be thought of as being part of the computer, and everyone else is the programmer, and they work together as a single unit to program this software. So I like to think of the person at the keyboard as freeing up the rest of the team to actually do the programming. The details of that I'd have to do in a different talk. We can't cover that all here now, but we sort of follow one of our important directives, the things that we followed for ourselves, not a rule, but it goes like this. For an idea to go from someone's head into the computer, it must go through someone else's hands. From my head in the computer, it has to go through your hands. That requires that we learn to communicate and share our ideas, and that's not just one person talking. That's one person talking, other people questioning, asking, sharing things back and forth, going to the whiteboard, locking down our idea, and trying it. And this is how it works. So I think I will quickly show just a minute or two. Hopefully this will not cause us any problems. Usually, often when we, I'm sorry for all these things. I shouldn't have had those open. When I show this video, it sometimes gives problems. Yeah, it looks like it's going to work. Some of you have seen this before, right? I probably showed it here last time I was here. This is available on YouTube. It's practically gone viral. There's something like 50,000 people have looked at it, which is nothing like going viral. But basically here, every morning we spend an hour working together, learning together. We spend this in a skills learning session. We actually investigate something we want to learn about. At that time, this was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we used a 15-minute rotation. Now we rotate more frequently. But you notice the person at the keyboard changes every 15 minutes in this video. Someone else is at the keyboard. Everyone else is considered a navigator when they're not at the keyboard. Everybody who is there has some value that we're bringing to the effort. They wouldn't be there if they weren't needed. We only want the people we need and nobody else. Nobody needs to be there if they're not part of doing this software development. Okay, so we don't need to see anymore. You can see how active it is, people moving about. It's your decision to stay with the team or move away from the team. You're in control of your own brain. So you get to do as you please. You'll notice here somebody's off working alone. You can go off and work alone at any time, go take a walk around the building, whatever you want to do. We won't go any further into this. You can look at this later on YouTube if you would like. And I have many conferences I've spoken at where they've recorded me introducing mob programming, so you can see those talks as well. Matter of fact, they made a recording of it here, which pretty much covers all that. Let's go on. So I'm going to show you really quickly a bunch of different places doing this work. It just shows you how flexible it is and also lets you see that it's actually accepted all over the place. That was Alaska, UK, what was this one in Hungary, in London, and in Boston, in Stockholm, and so on and so on. Some of you will know there's Alex Wilson and Benji Weber at Unruly in London. Some people using mob programming teaching Agile in Harvard. Zito, a company near me in San Diego. This is in South Africa. Notice this. North of the equator, everyone faces one way. South of the equator, scientifically, I don't yet know the reason for this, but I suspect it has to do with the tilt of the axis of the Earth. Let's continue on. This is pre-mob programming. Everybody knows who that person in the middle is there, right? But the thing is that this clearly shows all the needed people are focusing on one thing at one time. And you know they're doing Agile because they even have a Scrum Master up here in the corner making sure they're getting their work done, which is pretty cool. I was like 5 or 6 years old when that picture was taken, so I don't really know what they were doing. I never could talk with Grace Hopper. But let's go on. More people all over the world doing this. I get to go to Japan next week. I just can't wait to see how this is being done there. Fascinating to me. Fascinating to me. And here's a team doing it remotely. This is a team that's Andrea Goulet at the top. She lives and works in Richmond. And Wendy at the bottom, she lives and works in New York City. And they're working remotely, doing team work as a mob programming. This, of course, is, they took my advice and got some large monitors. But this isn't programming. You know, this is NASA Mission Control. But this is basically the same idea. They've gathered all the brilliant minds at one place to do the work that they need to do. And there is nobody there that doesn't need to be there. Matter of fact, on the plane from San Diego to London coming here, I sat right next to someone who's in the midst of doing this work. And he explained a lot about this to me, about the way this work is being done. Everybody's there for the whole mission, even if their specialty isn't needed at the moment, because at any moment something could happen that requires that they be there. This is very related to what I'm going to talk with you about today. When I share mob programming, however, I always get at least 2 questions, always. And the very first time I gave a talk on this would have been in 2012. I got this question was my first question. How can 5 people be productive working at one computer? And at first I would say, I don't know. And in my mind, I was thinking, how in the world does that matter? And whatever I think comes out my mouth, so I said it out loud. Why does that matter? That was maybe a little bit disrespectful, but it's not as bad as saying, what's wrong with you? Which I've tried sometimes, that doesn't work so well. Here's the thing, we didn't know why it was working. We didn't know how it was working. All we knew is that it was working. We are paying attention, and this is what we noticed. Now, I just put this slide together this morning, so hopefully I got everything spelled correctly. When we worked separately, and those blue lines represent the separations, and we did our work, and we added that work up, we got a certain amount done. But when we worked as a team, we got a certain amount more work done. But we noticed several other things. It wasn't just more work. And our regular calculations, it doesn't matter what they were, but because there's so many factors involved, too much variability, but we were getting something like 10 times the amount of work done. Finished work getting delivered to our users when we were working this way. How could that possibly be? But we noticed it was not just more stuff, but we were getting more useful stuff done. The nature of what we're doing was better. We were getting it better done, more completed in a reasonably easy to work with way, and it was of higher quality. All of these things combined together gave us a great amount of benefit, but I would like to share this right now. I don't really care if there was any benefit. It doesn't really matter if it wasn't any worse. If it was just as good as working separately, that would have been fine, right? It shouldn't have mattered. But if it was just the one thing we noticed more than anything, the very first day we did it, is that we enjoyed the day. We enjoyed the day more working together. And if that was the only benefit we got, then I would have wanted to continue working this way. So I started researching, why can this be? Because I want to be able to answer this question, and that's what I'm trying to do in this talk today. How can this be? So I started looking up what management experts and others had to say about it. And I love this quote from Russell Acuff. I'm going to read it just because those might be listening to this in a recording and won't be able to read it here. A system is not the sum of the behavior of its parts. It's the product of their interactions. Now, I think we can take it further than that nowadays. This was probably a quote from 30 years ago or something. But that's what we were noticing. So I wanted to know more about this. Well, the first thing is, I want to share a little bit about productivity. I think that was sort of the wrong focus, productivity. I want to talk about efficiency, productivity, and effectiveness. So condensed, efficiency is about doing things right. Productivity is we're going to get something finished, and we measure that by dividing the output by the input. And effectiveness is doing the right things. You can find quotes, you search around the internet, you'll find quotes such as, it's a lot better to work slowly on the right thing than to work quickly on the wrong thing. And there's many famous management gurus who have quotes that are similar to that. Why I'm after effectiveness is really important to me because of the problems with efficiency and productivity that trick us into believing those are meaningful things. I've got to be careful about. So efficiency is really just fulfilled by busy work. We can be very efficient at doing things that never even get done. So efficiency isn't a goal for me. Productivity, we might be getting something done, but we're not really measuring how useful are those things that we're getting done. So productivity isn't necessarily important to me, but effectiveness is. We're working on the right thing. How do we use this information? So let's go back to that original question. I don't want to use productive. What I want to use, oh, this is my father. This is my dad. He was what you would call a systems engineer in the phone company. And I learned a lot from him. And he would always say, the first question asked, we'll go back to that question. The first question asked is usually not a good question. We need to find a way to turn it into a better question. So when I heard that question, I started realizing I need to find a better question. So channeling him, he would say, you got to start phrasing the question a little bit better. And on your way to the better question. Peter Block, I quoted him earlier, Peter Block says this, transformation comes more from pursuing profound questions than seeking practical answers. I've said that now 1,000 times, I can almost recite that in my sleep. I think this is saying the answer is not in the answers. I hope that makes sense to you. It certainly doesn't to me. Okay. That was a bit of humor I threw in there. You should at least politely giggle. Thank you. If you don't know how to ask the right question, you discover nothing. You all know who Deming is. And if you don't, you probably should read one of his long and difficult to get through books. I've read several of them, and I have to reread them just to see if I understood what he was saying. So how can we be productive? I want to get rid of that productive, and I want to change it to being effective. Now I'm going to channel my father again. His thing would say, the first thing you need to do is take that original question and flip it over. When you flip the question over, that means you're going to pose the same question, but from the opposite point of view. So when I do this in a workshop, I will ask to get this from the people. What would be an opposite point of view, a reverse question? Because anybody here take a venture at that? What would be the opposite point of view? What question would we ask? How can you not be effective with only... Yeah, well, that's a double negative kind of thing. I'm not sure I understand it, but it's similar, close. Let's try again. Oh, how can you be effective with 5 people at 5 computers? That's real close to the question I came up with, so let's stick with that. So changing the productivity question into an effectiveness question, I gave it this spin. How can we be effective if we separate the people who should be working together? Now, that's not any more answerable than the first one, right? But it gives us a way to realize that that first question isn't complete enough. It's not necessarily a useful question. If we separate these people, and I like to do it with a little animation, it takes hours to do these in PowerPoint. We've separated these people, and not only have we separated them, we put barriers between them. Sometimes I've worked on teams where I have to go to my manager, so the manager can go to another manager to get permission for me to go speak with somebody on another team. So we put these barriers in place. How effective is this? So this is channeling my father. Again, we're looking for the better question. And this is the one that I came up with originally. What are the things that destroy effectiveness? If we knew that, then we could sort of start judging the difference between these ways of working or the similarities. So I would usually do this as an exercise. We clearly don't have time to do this here, so I'm going to show the results of doing this exercise, a 3-minute exercise at a workshop I did in Boston with 20 people. In 3 minutes, 20 people came up with 50 ideas of things that destroy effectiveness. Now I'm going to see if I can point out a few here. Unclear expectations, unclear requirements, lack of context or understanding, indecision, doubt, distractions, lack of knowledge, lack of skills. I love this pair here. Noise, too quiet. Because each of us is going to be affected in different ways by these things. I hope you can see this is just a short list. I have collected these over the years, and somewhere I've got a list of at least 200 things that destroy effectiveness on a software development team. You could probably add to this list. So if I bucketed these, if I put these all in the same bucket and categorized them, I should say, into buckets, I ended up with a short list. And this is what we initially noticed. Now, I put communication problems at the top because I think they're amongst the biggest problems we have. Much of the problems, other problems are related to that. What we noticed when we started working together was that most of those problems faded away for us. They didn't actually, we didn't set out to solve them. And I'm going to share about one of those, the communication problem called the question queue time. It's a term that I devised a few years ago to help me understand a problem we were having at a company, and it's this: the amount of time that we must wait to get the answer to a question that is blocking us. We're waiting in a queue to get that answer. I'm sure everywhere, everybody here works, you find times when you have something you can't answer for yourself, you can't find it on Google, you have to go to someone else to get the answer. Okay, so the question queue time, if we use a value stream map, we could look at it this way. The green bar represents we're getting our work done. The blue vertical lines represent we've been blocked by a question, and the red is the amount of time we're waiting to get the answer. So if we, to demonstrate this well, if we make an example where for every hour we work, we get one blocking question, then we can diagram it and see the effect of the question queue time. So if we have a 0 question queue time, then we will just work steadily throughout the day. We'll flow through all of our work. If we get blocked once an hour and we have a 2-minute queue time, we're going to have at least some context switching. Not a lot of wasted time necessarily, but potentially a problem. But let's see what happens. 10 minutes, we're losing an hour a day. What if it takes an hour to get the answer? We're losing 4 hours a day. What if it takes a day to get the answer? We've lost the day. It's not uncommon to see it taking a day or two to get an answer to a question that we need to get our work done. So how do we normally solve for this? What do we normally do? Somebody tell me. Work on more things. Let's take on another thing to work on. And in the industry, from records or studies I've read, it's something like most people are working on 3 or 4 or 5 things so that they can adjust to this. So we increase the inventory so we can stay busy. Well, that's a clue of where I'm going with this already. When we combine these things two together, it looks like we're always green, we're always busy. But in reality, we're also always red. And this is introducing some problems. And in reality, we're hiding the real problem because we've solved for a symptom. What was the symptom? We're not busy enough. What was the problem? We're not getting answers in a timely manner. Solving for a symptom is never a good thing to do. It hides the problem. And of course, inventory is work that we've started on that isn't yet delivering value or in use. I've asked this of companies all over the world. What is the inventory in your company of software? And almost nobody can tell me. How much work have you done on stuff that is not yet delivering value? Lots of things. So let's not solve queuing symptoms by introducing inventory problems. Now we just got 2 problems, and they're both really bad. Okay, so how did we solve for this? That's a trick question. We didn't solve for it. What did I tell you earlier? They faded away. These things faded away for us. Almost instantly, one of the first things we noticed was that we didn't need to go off the team to ask anybody a question. We had 0 queue time for any question that someone on our team could answer. However, our product owners were often not sitting there with us throughout the whole day. You saw in the video this particular person sitting there. They would usually come over for an hour or 2. So the rest of the day, we would be very much blocked if they couldn't answer us quickly. Several of them dedicated themselves to answering our questions quickly, and their work would get done quickly. This one particular fellow agreed to respond to any message we sent him within 2 minutes. And that kept his work getting done quickly. So someone noticed this is really about flow. And we were getting an automatic one-piece flow without trying to get a one-piece flow because we're always just working on one thing. So we're going to talk about flow now. This became the important word. So, Alan, you're going to let me know when I'm running out of time. How are we doing?
You've got 20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay. So I apologize for not being able to keep track of time, but I'm guilty of doing something many programmers do, and that is losing the sense of time while I'm working on something. When I'm focused like this, I don't even realize the time is passing, and in a moment, an hour is gone. Let's talk about flow. So at first, I thought it was flow versus flow, because we have the flow of psychological flow, and we have the flow of lean flow. And I believe when we're working as a team, we might have had a problem in destroying the one kind of flow in favor of the other kind of flow. Flow comes, the term, from this fellow, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I'm not sure I'm saying his name correctly, but if he's not here, it's probably not that critical. But he defines it this way. Flow is a state in which a person is so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. Have you ever felt or experienced that yourselves? I would love to see a show of hands. Have you ever felt that? Excellent. Lots of programmers will have, but also there's many things. Musicians get this, almost anybody in thought or knowledge work can have this. People playing computer games get in this state. And there's lots of value to it. I'm not sure if it's all valuable, but it's a state that we can get into. Another way of describing it is we're so involved in what we're doing, we don't see ourselves as being separate from that thing. And I think that's sort of what it's like. We are part of it when we're doing it. So I'm not going to go into the details of this. The nature of flow, these are the 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever aspects of it. You can look this up online. You can buy his books, and I've read several of his books and other people's writings on the topic. If we put it in this idea of being in the zone, I want to go over these. You know exactly what you want to do from one moment to the next. Things are flowing. Your sense of time disappears. You forget about yourself. I've actually had it happen where I'd be sitting there at the computer, let's say at night after work, and I'm programming something, and my wife said, she's an artist, she does all the art in my talks, and she says, hey, I'm going to make some dinner, I'm hungry, you want some dinner? I say, yeah. So she goes and makes dinner. She says, hey, dinner's ready, great. And then she comes and says, hey, I'm going up to bed. I say, I'll be right up there. And then she comes downstairs in the morning and says, hey, it's time to go to work. I say, but what about dinner? You know? So have you ever experienced something like that? You know what I'm talking about. You feel part of something larger than yourself. You're really not just yourself anymore. So what I thought was, do we destroy this when we work as a team? Or a better question is, can we get this flow as a team? I'm going to show you 4 pictures of people that I think are in this same state, but they're not necessarily doing programming. These, I don't even know what exactly they're doing, but all these people are focused on the same thing at the same time. They are in a group flow of some sort. This is another example. When I was a kid, there used to be a garage band that would play around the world, I guess, and we got to hear them. My older brothers were aware of them long before I was, so they started showing me, listening to some tapes and stuff they had gotten. And then in my later years, I looked at videos of them playing in some of their earlier years, and you can see that state of flow occurring between these people. You've heard of them, I'm sure, I hope. Who are these folks? So this is Xerox PARC, and this is, I don't know what they're in a state of flow right there, but here's a group of people gathered together. I would like to think that they worked in this manner. But this is a really pointed picture here. These people are all focused on the same thing at the same time in the same space, and if they weren't, they probably couldn't even do this work. I like this. So these are pictures of us doing it in different ways. This is a kind of team flow. And so I did some research. I found some writing on it. This fellow, Jeff van den Hout, am I saying that correctly? I guess he's out of the Netherlands, perhaps. He's written a paper on this. You can get that paper online for free, a PDF. This is identifying some of the conditions that we must have to have team flow, but also some of the results of doing it. So I would say get the book and give it a read. This started me realizing that we can have the team flow and we can have an individual flow at the same time, because everyone is in charge of their own thought process. Our basic, I would say, guideline was, if you feel you need to go work alone, you just go work alone. And then you bring your idea back to the team. And all we ask is that you stay available in case we have a question for you. So you're in control of your own thought process. As we learned to think better as a team, it became less necessary to be thinking alone. Joshua Karievsky puts it this way about pair programming. Pair programming is the continuous integration of ideas. And this just expands on that. Okay, so this is all good. Another example of apophenia, right? We see things that aren't really there. What does that look like to you? Is that a smiley face? Kind of? Okay. That was just put in there for the fun of it. Okay, but there's this other kind of flow, which is the flow in lean, and that's sort of what we're covering here today. In manufacturing, flow, that's, by the way, my wife made that picture specifically for me. Most of the time, she makes pictures for her portfolio or for her work, and when I see one that looks like it matches something I want to talk about, I try to get the permission to use that. In this case, she made that for me. That's a picture of me on my first job when I was 12 years old. I worked at a plant nursery. And so this is how she envisioned I looked like back then. So I kind of like that picture. And my job was to water the plants. Matter of fact, my boss told me something really important, and it made me feel very important in my work. And he said, these plants will die if you do not water them properly. It's your responsibility to keep them alive. I really like that. That was an interesting way to think about that work. Alrighty. So flow and lean, let's do this in the manufacturing, because it's very simple to understand it in manufacturing. We're going to go complete manufacture or production of a single piece from start to finish, from beginning to end, with as little queuing or waiting or inventory between steps. So as we get the work done, it flows through the process. We don't stop at any point. It just continues on through. Now, if you do this, ideally, there will be no inventory. It will be all manufactured as we go. And if we do this well, there will be never any waiting. But that's a perfect world. We never get that. Reinertsen wrote a book about this for product development. Product development is very different from manufacturing. We try to compare these things. They're not really comparable. This is another good book to read 3 or 4 times. I'm on my 4th read now. I'm still trying to digest everything that's in there. It's very dense. It's very packed with information. There's a great chapter on queuing, and that's mostly what I'm referring to here. Great book to read. So, if we see the value stream map that we would use for this in product development flow, we're going to see, this isn't about the question queue time now, the green is going to represent working on the right things, and the red represents working on everything else. I think of the right things because software development is a process of discovery. It's also the exploring, the experimenting, the discovery. The wrong things are almost everything else that we do, such as waiting, merging, arguing, discussing rather than trying things, work that doesn't need to be done, doing the wrong thing, failure demand, meetings, coordination, prioritizing. I hope I'm not, well, maybe I hope I'm not, I hope not being too hard on you whose focus in your work is the coordination and prioritizing of things. So I hope I'm not offending you. But I would warn you about these things. I'm not able to tell you whether it's good to do them in your work or not. But these are the things I'm watching out for. So I'm going to talk about this just a little bit. To me, what is flow in software development? Flow in software development is each story is going to flow from idea to delivered working software directly, with as little or no queuing, waiting, distraction, interruption, or multitasking. That's what mob programming does. So that sort of leads me to the answer of why I think mob programming can be effective. It essentially is this, and you see circles drawn like this all the time. It's not, we don't really have a linear process. We can sometimes go directly from an idea to writing the code without writing a story first or discussing a story first and so on. But pretty much it has to flow like this. But this is something we're going to do over and over. It's an iteration idea. So here we go from the idea to story, then some kind of design and code, and then deploying it to real use. Because until it's in somebody's hands, we can't know anything about the effectiveness of this thing. The feedback, and then we can evaluate. What did we learn? Where in this process do we learn, by the way? Somebody tell me. Everywhere. Everywhere in this process. All righty. So what do we want to optimize for? This is sort of the conclusion here. We want to optimize for something different than what we're currently optimizing for. We want to optimize for the flow of the work rather than the output of the individual. It's a very different thing. You can't get them both. We don't care about the output of the individual. That's busy work. We care about the flow of the work. This makes it naturally able to output the results we want. Okay, so we're not trying to get the most work out of each person. What we're attempting to do is to get the best of each of us into everything we do. It's a very different focus. When I used to work alone, and the first 15 years of my software development life, I worked alone. I never worked with other people in writing my code. I noticed that I would get the very best of me into everything I did, and the very worst of me into everything I did. Then when I started pairing, which started in 1999 for me, I was introduced to the idea, I noticed that I would get the best of me, but I'd also get the best of my pair into everything that I did. So we were now combining our bests and none of our worsts, because we were always elevating each other beyond what our worst would have been. So this was a big benefit to me. That's why I really focused on getting good at pair programming. It took me about 5 years to go from novice to accomplished at being able to pair program. I'm not easy to get along with. I had to start learning how to actually get along with people. Okay, you can see that mob programming just emphasizes that, the idea. When you have 5 people working together, we're going to get the best of each one of us, and we're not going to get anything close to the worst of anybody into our work. We have all the needed skills, knowledge there at the moment. So the principle of queuing waste from Reinertsen is this: queues are the root cause of the majority of economic waste in product development. Something like, I think in his book he says, 95% of the waste is from queuing. Interesting. Is that worth investigating? I would say it was for me. So if you find it interesting, his book is that product flow book. I'll provide a link to it. You can find it online easily enough. I'm not going to go into details on this, but this is basically what he says. Queues create a longer cycle time. Longer cycle time is not good. It leads to all these kinds of things. We're going to have increased risk because we're not discovering the problem soon enough. We're going to have more variability. Now, variability in software development is a difficult thing maybe to pin down, but we're basically going to end up with problems, different problems, each iteration as far as our process and how we're getting things done. I've noticed this. If I'm working with somebody else, I should say it this way, if I'm working separately and I need to get an answer for somebody else and I go over them and I say, hey, can you help me? Now they have to get out of their context and they have to enter my context. So I'm disrupting them, and now I have to get them into my context as quick as possible. If I do it really quickly, I'm probably leaving some things out. They finally give me the help that I need. I go back to my desk to work, and then I go, oh, wait, I forgot to mention this. This thing that they just asked me to do to solve this problem, I realized that I'd already tried it. So now I need to go back and disrupt them again. So the variability starts happening because we're not all staying in the same context. We get this more overhead, and that's another example of the same thing, and our quality is going to lower down. We noticed an interesting thing. When we started working together, our quality went through the roof. In the 3.5 years I remained at Hunter after we started mob programming, we only had 3 bugs get reported into our bug tracking system. There was no longer a need for a bug tracking system because our quality increased so much. The last thing is there's less motivation, but I won't get into that. I think that we destroy motivation in some ways, but we really just displace it. Motivation works from you're motivated to get your work done to you're motivated to protect yourself from the nonsense that's going on around you that's being created by the people who are protecting themselves from the nonsense that's going on around them. So when we have that happening, there's a problem. Okay, so I think I can answer my original question. The effectiveness question. How can we be effective with 5 people at one computer? And I call this flow plus flow. Or originally I did, rather than flow versus flow. And I see these 3 kinds of flows, so I'm going to call it flow plus flow plus flow. And being programmers, we really would call that, right? So, if it's flow plus plus, what is this about? Well, we get the individual flow because each individual is in control of their own mind space. They still know how they best think. And everybody can think better sometimes working alone. I'll take it a big step further. Do we still have a few moments left? Oh, we still have 10 minutes left. Then, like I said yesterday, I'm going to start speaking much slower. Because I don't want to give up a moment of my time. The individual flow is up to you to how you need to have it. And you need to learn to start recognizing when you're working this way that you're in charge of that. So if you need to zone out for a while, you can zone out for a while. If somebody needs to drag you back in, they'll drag you back in. You know, if we need your help on something, normally we'll find each one of us is not as busy and we don't feel as productive as when we're working alone, because we don't feel the same pressures. When we're working together, we're sharing the cognitive load. I don't have to keep everything in my mind. We're sharing that across the whole team. But we get this team flow as well. And that's where if somebody shares an idea, then somebody else picks up on that idea, and we start batting them back and forth, we quickly get to better ideas. What we've noticed, though, is if we have two conflicting ideas and two people insisting that we should try their own idea, then we go ahead and try them both. We try them both. If we try the one, we'll learn something. And then we try the other, we'll learn something. And guess what? At the end, we don't need to decide which one we like more, because what will have happened by then? A third better idea. Have you ever seen that? A third better idea. Maybe a combination of the two, but what we learned from trying them, it's important to go to the trying rather than just staying in the discussion. I saw a couple programmers talk once. It essentially went like this. We were creating a maze for a competition for high schoolers, a robotics competition. And they were trying to put a radio signal at one end, and they were talking about the height of it. And this isn't the exact conversation, but you'll see how this went. The one said, yeah, it should be 6. And the other one said, no, it should be half a dozen. And the first one said, no, 6. And the other one said, no, half a dozen. I worked on a project for 2 years with this, and it had to be a half a dozen. And the one said, well, you know, I worked on a project for 3 years with this, and it really needs to be 6. And they went on this way for a half hour, and none of us could get them to stop. And we gave up trying to get them to stop. Till finally somebody said, look, we got to get this done. And we were diverted their attention just long enough by sleight of hand. Okay, so we believe we're enabling the lead flow not only by eliminating the cues, but all these other things we talked about earlier. Working closely together, the communication is one advantage. The sharing of the cognitive load is another. That we don't divert off of our ideas. When we separate to work, the moment we separate, we're going in different directions. And later on, we need to integrate that. And that integration problem happens when somebody has to defend their reason for making a decision. Do you remember a week and a half later why you made any specific decision along the way? You just were taking the best steps you thought you could. And now you have to somehow defend that. You know, as you're saying, well, which way should we do it when we're integrating our work later? Okay, so we've eliminated the lean flow, so we got this flow plus plus. Essentially, all the problems that I showed you earlier faded away. I got to show that again, because that took me a long time to do. They faded away when we started working together as a team. Quite amazing, isn't it? So back to my original thought. The object isn't to create art. It's to be in that wonderful state which makes art inevitable. Now, I learned this when I was in my 20s from somebody who was teaching me something, and I asked them to teach me this thing. And they said, well, I can teach you that thing, but that's not an important thing. This is an important thing, and he shared this with me. And he was a letterer. I had a sign shop at the time, and he wrote this out in a nice card for me in a beautiful script, which I was wanting to learn how to do that beautiful script. And he said, you can't really learn to do this script until you're in the space that you can do this script. That means you have to learn about your materials. You have to learn about the brush itself, the nature of the brush itself. If you allow it to do what it can naturally do, that means you have to get out of the way and let that brush, its own springiness, the nature of the consistency of the paint and how you load your brush, and that is what makes it happen. This is getting in the state where the good thing can happen. And I believe we're at 5 minutes. Thank you. And I'm on my last slide, so I think we didn't do too bad. So there we go. That was mob programming, the power of the flow. Notice the picture. This was taken at the Go-To Copenhagen, and it makes me look like I know what I'm talking about. So that's why I use that. And I'll put an advertisement on the very end. I have written a little book that's available on LeanPub about mob programming. So, and I believe we'll make these slides available probably, or some version of them, so you don't have to worry too much. I know a lot of you, hopefully you've all been tweeting out. If you haven't been, shame on you. But thank you. So maybe I'll take a question. Is that okay to do? We'll take a question. Does anybody have a question? Yes? How do introverts react to that? Would you believe that I'm an introvert?
I can imagine my partner killing me for that.
So let's talk about that for a second. How do you collaborate with them anyway? How do you work with them anyway?
It takes me some effort.
It takes some effort. And maybe you had to learn how to do it. So I would say this. On our original team, we had 3 people that could self-identify as introverts, and one of them an extreme introvert. He basically had to leave the team about every 15 minutes to 45 minutes to be alone for a while. So we learned to adjust to everybody's needs. So I would say not everybody can perfectly work this way, but introversion is a scale. It's not like one thing. An introvert is this, and an extrovert is that. Most of us have a combination of the two. But that one particular person wrote a paper about this that he presented at the Agile conference in 2014 or 15, and you can find it online from the Agile Alliance, and maybe we can get a link for that. We need to work with the people that we are working with. And if our only way of collaborating with someone is through written documents and so on, then we're going to give up this level of flow, and that's what it's going to be. We need to figure out how can we do this. But I basically am an introvert. When I'm at a family gathering, and there's 4 or 5 people in the room, I pretty much have to leave the room. It's too much noise and too much going on. So I go and sit alone. Some of my nieces or nephews will come talk to me, and I can handle that. So each one of us has to find our own comfort level. Can we learn a little bit better how to work with others? And reverse, can we bring them along and help them work on the team? But that shouldn't stop us from doing that. So we'll take another question. Here. Oh, so you've talked to somebody who's done mob programming, they say it's quite exhausting. So what we found, actually, because people started emailing us, hey, we're trying this, but it's really fatiguing, we weren't getting fatigued. And so we talked about it as a team, and this is what we came up with. If you focus too much on what we're trying to do and try to understand everything, you're going to wear yourself out. What we were looking for always was we wanted to provide the right contribution at the right time and in the right way. And this means we don't need to contribute every idea we have. We don't have to understand everything that's going on. So maybe it's a little bit of a learned skill, but we learned to do that long before we were doing mob programming because we were practicing coding dojos together. And when we do these coding dojos, we had a rule where the only person allowed to speak was the navigator, one navigator. So everyone else was learning to be quiet and contributing only when it was their turn. So yeah, it can be fatiguing, but I would say let's notice that that's happening and let's find a way to alleviate that. We should find it to be sustainable and relaxing. I find it to be a sustainable, relaxing way to work. So maybe others can as well. And I think we're done.
Take
One more question. So there's one over here. Your hand was waving. Yes. You've mob programmed. Thank you.
But the reason for that was no one in this team knows anything about this. All new people, so essentially kind of reversing the things. We were told essentially we had to use a new language. No one knew that.
So you need to learn a new language.
Yes. That was the main reason.
And that was the main reason. So actually, this is a great way to learn together. If you all separated to learn, you would see some certain result. And what we found, because originally we were using a similar technique for learning, so when we gathered together, we noticed we would learn a lot more. So we were, for 6 months, we were having every Friday, before we started mob programming, we were having a 3-hour learning session to learn the things we needed to learn. And we found that learning together, using a coding dojo similar to mob programming, we were learning a lot. So it naturally kind of eventually evolved into our style of working. But it certainly was an effective thing. Thanks for pointing that out. Was there a question on that? Okay, yeah. So there's support right there. Thank you. I appreciate that. All righty, so I think we're done.
Thank you, Woody.
Thank you very much.